LinkedIn presents.
Happy Wednesday, friends. I'm Michael Kovnat, and this is the Next Big Idea Daily. Quick masterclasses from the best new books written and read by the authors themselves. Don't forget to hit follow in your podcast app and sign up for our free newsletter using the link in the episode notes. Now, we like to think of the brain as a tidy, logical machine, but the truth is, it's more like a trickster, brilliant, unpredictable, and deeply invested in storytelling. That's the idea at the heart of The Mind Electric, a new book by neurologist Pria Anand. Drawing from clinical experience, global folklore, and the history of medicine itself, Pria explores how we use stories to both shape and understand our mental health. She'll share her big ideas right after this quick break.
From LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, host of Everyday Better, an award-winning podcast dedicated to personal development. Join me every week for captivating stories and research to find more fulfillment in your work and personal life. Listen to Everyday Better on the LinkedIn Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Pria Anand. I'm a neurologist and the author of The Mind Electric, a neurologist on the strangeness and wonder of our brains. I am here to share with you 5 key insights from the book about the complex relationship between culture, illness, stories, and our brains. Our brains are built to tell stories. Our hunger for narrative is so deeply hardwired into our brains that even when someone experiences a devastating brain injury and loses some essential brain function, for instance, their ability to form memories, their capacity to tell stories often not only survives the injury, but really surges. A remarkable example of this is the neurologic symptom of confabulation, which happens when our brains construct elaborate, imagined stories beyond our conscious control and even beyond our awareness. I've cared for patients who have suffered amnesia as a result of a long-standing vitamin deficiency or a brain infection, who lost part of their life history as a consequence of their illness, really a profound and devastating loss. And to compensate, their brains confabulated new life stories to fill in the gaps in the information that they were missing. People and communities also tell stories to explain neurologic illnesses and symptoms, often through fables and myths. One example of this is the great range of folklore that exists around sleep paralysis, which often happens when someone is either falling asleep or waking up, just at the boundary between sleep and consciousness. You might have experienced sleep paralysis. When someone experiences it, they find themselves frozen, and they often see images from their dreams, even though they're wide awake. People who have experienced sleep paralysis describe sort of imagined sounds, the sensation of flying from their beds, the inkling of a shadowy figure just beyond their line of sight, or the sensation of the weight of a creature seated on their chest. Sleep paralysis is shockingly common. Something like 1 out of every 10 people will experience it at some point during the course of their lives. And as a result, nearly every cultural tradition has a fable or a myth to explain this strange experience of sleep paralysis. There are hundreds of words for sleep paralysis. In Japanese, it is kanashibari, a spell cast by a specter or a sorcerer. In Khmer, it is kamau sankat, the ghost that pushes you down. And in Albanian, it is makti, a shadowy man in a golden hat who offers exhausted women the relief of stillness in a moment of sleep paralysis during sleep. Doctors are not immune to this desire to tell stories about illness. Medical students are taught to imagine a binary between doctor and patient, science and faith, sort of objective truth and superstitious fallacy, us and them. Morning rounds in hospitals are really an exercise in telling and retelling patients' stories in a way that explains their illness, cloaked in the sense of objectivity offered by our white coats. But the stories we tell on these rounds are just as prone to false truths as the reports of an amnesia patient. They are subconsciously shaped by our priors, by our communities, by our own narratives. In writing this book, I spent time reading medical texts that were decades old, or in some cases centuries old. And in those texts, there are so many similarities between the ways that medicine might make sense of a disease that is newly discovered or still in some way mysterious, and the way that communities and patients do the same. We are all contending with the devastation of illness, using the limited tools we have at our disposal, and chief among those tools is the stories that we tell. Neurologic symptoms, the idiosyncrasies of our brains, have a way of seeping into both art and literature. You may not know that Dostoevsky suffered from epilepsy. He experienced seizures, always preceded by a dreamy aura of elation. He wrote his own epilepsy into his novels, from The Brothers Karamazov to The Idiot. In turn, much of what we understand about the organization of the brain comes from art, from the drawings of a 19th century Spanish neuroscientist called Santiago Ramón y Cajal, who was the son of a village surgeon. His father wanted him to be a doctor, but he wanted to be an artist. And as he was growing up, his father would bring him to burial grounds to dig up corpses from graves with expired leases to use for anatomical studies. He would sketch the skeletons, and he was fascinated by the ways that a body could really be more than the sum of its parts. He did eventually become a doctor, but he kept drawing, and he shifted his eye to what he called the butterflies of the soul, the minute structures of our brains and spinal cord. He has these drawings of the nervous system that are strange and fantastical and reveal the way that our brains are really an entire universe, filled with constellations and alien terrain, with branching trees and fungal hyphae and feathery butterfly wings and tangled gardens and drifting seaweed. Where other scientists saw only chaos, he saw order. Ramón y Cajal realized that the tangled gardens he saw under his microscope were actually networks of individual neurons, each beckoning to the next across the cleft of a synapse. And it was this revelation, the neuron doctrine, really born of his artist's eye, that won him the Nobel Prize. Even the strangest symptoms can tell us something essential about ourselves as humans. We imagine that there's some sort of binary between healthy brains and failing ones, when in reality, the functions of our bodies cannot be so easily or neatly categorized. There is actually a vast gray area that stretches between wellness and illness, and neurologic symptoms can reveal universal truths about the human experience, from language to perception to consciousness.
Thank you, Pria. Okay, everyone, you can get a copy of The Mind Electric using the link in the episode notes. That's our show for the day. If you got something out of it, please leave a rating or review in your podcast player so others can find it too. And go to nextbigideaclub.com to find out about our hardback subscription club. That's where we send you the best new nonfiction books as selected by our curators, Malcolm Gladwell, Adam Grant, Susan Cain, and Daniel Pink. Check it out at nextbigideaclub.com. I'm Michael Kovnat. See you tomorrow.